Hey guys, it's Bruce and Nick, and today we're going to be talking about positive psychology in Guardians of the Galaxy, as you could probably tell from our very uncreatively titled PowerPoint, but it's right what it says on the tin. So, to talk about positive psychology, we really need to talk about a few key concepts, and then at the end, we're going to kind of connect it back to the movies. So, there's three major subjects that we're going to talk about here today, and the first is subjective well-being. Now, subjective well-being is exactly what it sounds like. It's how happy you are and how fulfilled and fulfilling your life is. But since that's such a unique thing from person to person, it's called subjective well-being because no two people are going to have exactly the same measures of what well-being is. But what some what some researchers and psychologists have done is they've made um, certain measures and models to sort of determine how happy and how fulfilled your life is. And the biggest one is the PERMA model of happiness. This was developed by Martin Seligman and Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who are very prominent figures in the realm of positive psychology, especially Martin Seligman. But they developed this PERMA model, and you can see right here that the letters stand for positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievements. Most of these are pretty self-explanatory. I don't think we need to go into too much detail about them. But one thing I do want to expand upon a little bit is relationships, the R in PERMA. Basically, what I wanted to clarify is that this isn't just any relationship like friendships and stuff like that. This is for this is specifically more focused on closer, intimate relationships, like with very very close friends, romantic relationships, and close family. So that's the word relationships might imply that it's a little bit broader than it actually is, but I just wanted to clarify that point. Speaking of relationships, the other aspect of this that we wanted to talk about is uh, relationships is really the most ambiguous of these. It's like you know what positive emotions are. You know what engagement looks like. You know what making achievements looks like. These things are individualized, but they're generally you can kind of get a guideline for what those look like in people. Relationships is a little bit more is a little bit harder to define. Like what makes a good relationship, and to answer that question, you look towards Sternberg's theory of love, also known as Sternberg's triangular theory of love. It's a concept that you might be familiar with if you took. I don't remember if it was positive or if it was psychology of adjustment or contemporary issues in psychology. One of them had it was one of the ones taught by Mike Peters, for me at least, but he explained this concept is it's like a triangle, and each of the triangle is labeled different. Each point of the triangle is labeled differently. There's a passion, commitment, and intimacy, and the less the less intimate relationships, or the less I guess I should say fulfilling relationships, kind of occupy only one point of the triangle. Like one night flings with a lover might be just passion, and relationships that you kind of feel stuck in and but aren't really happy with, um, they might be commitment only. But some meaningful relationships occupy one side of the triangle, so 2 points. For example, passion and intimacy might be a someone who you're not necessarily in a committed relationship with, but someone that you maybe have like an on and off thing with. Commitment and passion uh, would be like a someone who is sorry, I'm brain farting here, but basically the point is that you have one side of the triangle, and that's like a pretty good relationship. It's not perfect, but it's it hits two of the major points. And then the ideal relationship for a romantic partner, at least, would be someone that fills all three sides of the triangle. Um, and that's you're passionate about them, you're intimate with them, and of course you are committed to them. So that's all we have to say about that.
And this next slide is going to be about leisure. So leisure basically has to do with anything that doesn't involve direct work or direct duties. So in a more Western sense, it's any like activity you do not involving work. or it could be any activity you do not involving like farm work or like herb work, depending on what your culture is around the world. It allows people to form their own sense of achievement. It's something that they really do for themselves. Um, and it's generally something that's created by themselves for themselves. It's not something that's expected to them. Um, it's just something they enjoy. Um, and then it allows the brain some downtime from the deadlines they have. Um, so they kind of create their own deadlines. They're creating their own sense of achievement, and they're creating their own meaning for whatever their leisure time is. And leisure time generally involves hobbies. Um, so everyone kind of has their own different definition of what their own leisure time is. It can vary between someone who says they're an introvert and someone who says they're an extrovert. We have a few examples here, like playing video games, or you may enjoy reading. You're going to set up your own sense of accomplishment with those things. Ideally, no one's forcing you to do these things. Again, reading can be academic or it can be work related, but leisure related reading generally have the same effect as work related reading. Um, and then in addition to that, again, you're creating your own achievements. You're deciding what your goals are, what you want to do with it. No one's telling you how to do that. You don't need like to do this thing in order to survive or get food or get money. It's really providing your brain with just some downtime so it can focus on other things. On to the next slide. Flow includes a person being fully immersed in an activity between the level of boredom and anxiety. Um, so it's basically something that challenges you, but isn't so challenging to the point where it's causing you frustration. You're constantly feeling like it's a new thing you have to do, a new skill you have to exercise, but it's not becoming so tedious you're getting bored or you're getting tired of it. Um, Frequently referred to as being in the zone. We see this a lot with athletes, a lot with musicians, a lot with gamers. I don't know if anyone watching or viewing the slideshow has ever played an instrument or been in a video game, where they kind of get to their point where it just feels like everything's going by seamlessly. They're hitting every note seamlessly. It's just kind of like happening. They're not really thinking about it. And that kind of refers to this flow and being in the zone.
So to connect this all back to the actual movies, um, to apply these concepts, the real question that we're trying to ask here is, what do these movies have to say about positive psychology? And I think you could argue that they say a lot about positive psychology, particularly the first movie. The core character arc of a lot of the characters, especially Rocket, Drax, arguably Peter, is being able to care about others. Um, it's a simple one. You know, you look at Rocket and Drax and again Quill, and they're all sort of just in it for themselves at the beginning. Even Gamora, arguably. I mean, she cares about stopping Ronan, but she's also in it to get a quick buck. You know, she's like, I'm gonna sell the stone, knock out two birds with one stone, get the money, and stop Ronan. She's not doing it to be completely selfless until the end, and they this character arc for all of them really comes to a head at the end when they're on Yondu's ship and Peter, that is, says to them, "This is our chance to give a shit." And he's really trying to convince them to care about other people and to try to accomplish something. And I think that what it's trying to say here, what the movie is trying to say here, is that true happiness is caring about others and finding meaning in your relationships with others, and that's checks all of our boxes of um, being having positive relationships, getting meaning, feeling achievement, being engaged in what you're doing, all of these things. And that's a key part of the first movie, and also arguably the second. But um, the second thing that the movies seem to want to say, and this is somewhat connected to the first, is that these things, meaning and engagement, can come to you, but only if you try to find them first. Like, they're not just going to plop right down on your lap. You really need to be the one to take that step and to take the initiative and find your own happiness. And I think that that's shown evidently by the fact that if it wasn't for Quill, none of these guys would have even made it this far. None of them would have come together. None of them would have been anything other than just temporary business partners. And it's Quill's intervention that really gives them the identity of, we're the Guardians of the Galaxy. We help people, or well, sometimes we help people, sometimes we rob them blind. But it's still, they're the ones that made that identity for themselves. They didn't just kind of come together and were like, yeah, we're a group now. Um, and I think that if we wanted an example of a character that puts this all in action, I think that Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is the best example of someone who exhibits all of these concepts in positive psychology. Um, he feels such strong emotions, as we see through Mantis, who is able to replicate what other people are feeling. He is always, when he's happy, he's incredibly infectiously happy, and when he is sad, he is incredibly dismally sad. And when he feels these highs and lows, they're so powerful. And I think that that's, his emotions are so strong. And I think that connects back to our topic about positive emotions. He's a very he has positive relationships with all the members of the Guardians of the Galaxy. He's intimate with some of them in the sense of, he's able to talk to them and have deep, meaningful conversations, even if he has a strange way of doing it. His species as a whole is very intimate. He shares personal details about his life that everyone else is like, that's disgusting, but he's like, no, that's just life, you know. And I think that his natural inclination towards intimacy is what makes him such a positive character. He's very focused on leisure and flow. He sees his combat and what he does as leisure. I think probably more so than any of the others. He gets strong enjoyment out of what he does, and he enters for sure into a flow state. I mean, if you look at him at the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy 2, when he's fighting that big monster and over the batteries, he says like, I need to jump into its stomach and cut it from the inside, and everyone's like, that's a stupid idea, that doesn't make any sense. But he does it anyway because he's just not listening. He's so in the zone. He gets such tunnel vision that he's never gonna give up what he once he sets his mind to it, especially in combat. It's set. There's nothing you can do about it. And for that reason, for all these reasons, we think that Drax is a good example of what it means to be a positive person in Guardians of the Galaxy. And we think that the movie is trying to say, in some ways, Drax is kind of the butt of a lot of jokes. He's kind of used as comic relief. But I think that a lot of what the movie says about him is like, positive, being a very positive person can kind of have its ups and downs, where it's like, yes, you are happy, you form relationships easily, you are able to intimately connect with other people very easily. But he is still very when he gets super in the zone, it can sometimes be a bad thing, like that it made their job harder when he jumped into that monster's stomach. And he's also like kind of weird. He weirds people out. He doesn't always read social cues very well. A lot of people bring parallels between Drax and an autistic person, in the sense of like, yeah, it's like, all right, you need to know when to like stop. And he doesn't really get that. But that's just kind of, I think, that how he and his species are, with in terms of intimacy. Intimacy comes very naturally to him. And but that's not always a good thing, and I think that something interesting to take away from this is that the most positive character in the two movies is not always the one making the best decisions. It's sometimes it's not always good to be just positive centric all the time, but sometimes it can be. Sometimes Drax has these moments of lucidity and wisdom that none of the other characters even come close to. Um, but it's really interesting. But yeah, that's really all we wanted to say about the two movies, and connecting them back to the main topics that we have talked about here today. So we'll move on to the next slide with questions.
The two questions we have for you, starting with question one, is flow demonstrated in the battles between the Guardians and the outside forces. We did kind of cover this one already. Again, flow is that like area right between being challenged and being bored, where you're really being able to show your skills, but it's not so tedious that it becomes boring. And then we have the second question: where is the line between leisure and active achievement in the Guardian's work? Again, this goes back to one of the first slides. Um, Active achievement being more like saying they achieved something, or saying they accomplished a goal that they wanted to, that they set out for themselves. And leisure is, again, something they enjoy. It's not work related, it's not related to something they would have to do to survive.